It's good too.
Good evening, everyone. Is everyone seated? Almost? Just one more minute, let the folks coming in have a seat. Thank you all for coming to the at-large forum. It's definitely the first of the political season. My name is REVZECH, and I'm here to do the introductions and to go over the rules of tonight's events. Your moderators tonight are two of Newark's finest residents, as well as valued members of the Homes for All Newark organization, and my friends. To my right, Mrs. Janice Afalo. To my left, Freedom Bremner. We want to thank our co-sponsors, the Newark Community Development Network and Plan Newark. Before we continue, a few housekeeping rules. Please mute your cell phones. The exits are located there. The bathrooms are located by the student mailboxes. If you miss it, there's a sign that says restroom. Who is Home for All Newark? Well, we are part of a nationwide campaign addressing the housing crisis in the United States. We are renters, houseless people, public housing residents, and homeowners. We come from every ward, and we are on a mission to address Newark's housing crisis. Did you know that 78% of Newarkers are renters? Did you know while rents continue to go up, our incomes remain the same? Did you know an astonishing 88% of us live in neighborhoods at risk of displacement by increased housing costs? And did you know the federal administration has made draconian cuts in the HUD budget? Homes for All Newark works to protect, defend, and expand housing that is truly affordable and dignified for everyone in Newark. With that said, let's talk about tonight's ground rules. The candidates will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, 1 minute to respond to the questions. John Goldstein and Walter Diaz are timekeepers. They are also members of the Homes for All Newark. Please do not exceed your time. If you do, you will detract from everyone's opportunity to hear many responses as possible. This is not a debate. We will not allow any back and forth between candidates. We will change who goes first after each round of questions, and we ask the audience to please refrain from cheering or booing. We only have 2 hours, and we want to hear as much as we can from the candidates. Just a friendly FYI, we invited all at-large candidates by mail, email, Facebook, telephone, Pony Express. On the screen, you can see the responses from those who will not be joining us tonight.
But Jamarius is here.
But Jamarius is here. Thank you. Good. Answer your vote. Okay, let's take a minute to get into the spirit of tonight's forum. Can everyone?
The people who have not joined us?
The people who have not joined us tonight are in the back. Okay. So while we're here, I'd like everyone to please stand. And in the spirit of tonight's forum, please turn to the person to your side, shake hands, and introduce yourselves. Now that we've gotten to know each other, can everyone please be seated? And without further ado, I introduce you to your moderators, Mrs. Janice Afalo and Freedom Brenner.
Good evening, everyone. We have some people who are not in attendance. The first question will go to Helene Freeman. Do you support the existing rent control?
That's not the first question. Introduction.
Oh, my apologies, my apologies. I want to give all of you an opportunity to introduce yourself, excuse me. You each, all the candidates present, have 2 minutes to introduce yourself. And as part of your introduction, we would like to hear your thoughts about Newark's current housing crisis. So in that spirit, I will begin with Helene Freeman.
Hi, my name is Helene Freeman. I'm a long-time resident here in the city of Newark. Went to grammar school, high school, and I attend college in Newark, and I'm a graduate student in Newark as well. I've lived in the North Ward for over 40 years, and prior to that, was in the Central Ward. In reference to the housing situation, as a graduate student in the RUTGERS School of Social Work, I've been volunteering with homeless individuals over the past year with the Newark Public Library. The Newark Public Library is one of the few institutions here in the city of Newark that's really addressing the needs of the homeless individuals, trying to find them shelter, trying to find them programs, connecting them with services. There's a severe housing shortage, and the housing shortage is not just affecting renters. With the skyrocketing prices with housing here in the city, even homeowners will be pushed out and pushed to their limits. I was reading an article in Politico called Cory Booker's Newark's Mirage, and one of the people interviewed said that his tax burden in Forest Hill is over $21,000 a year for his home. So he faces possibly losing his house to the tax burden.
You have 30
So
seconds
it's
left.
a problem, and that needs to be addressed. And current sitting council is not doing so.
Thank you. To your left, I'm going to ask Ms. Freeman, would you move the microphone to the candidate to your left? Yes, I'd like you to introduce yourself. I can't see your full title there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shakima K. Thomas, and I was born and raised in Newark. I grew up in Dayton Street Projects and lived on South 16th Street for most of my time. My grandparents' house is still there, and currently my father is the owner. I'm also a homeowner in Newark. I'm a mom of a 3-year-old. I went to school in Newark Public Schools, Dayton Street Elementary. I graduated from University High School, and I also graduated from Rutgers University, Newark. So I don't think I can get any more Newark than that. I also work downtown on 18 Rector Street, Division of Family Assistance and Benefits, formerly known as the Division of Welfare. And I was also instrumental in installing the kiosks that we have there with the computer systems where people can file their applications online. So I currently work with a lot of people who are displaced. A lot of our clients who come into the office are going south because they can't afford to live in Newark anymore. I constantly get emails, text messages about people looking for places to live. So we definitely do have a housing crisis, and this is something I think we should all come together and find a
You
solution.
have 30 seconds left.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Victor Monterosa Jr., and I'm running for councilman at large. My grandmother came here in 1974. My mother came here in 1982 from war-torn El Salvador. I grew up here. I went to South Street School, I went to Oliver Street School, I went to Science High School, where I'm proudly a debate champion for several years. At Science High School, I became an activist. That's where I started working with the Green Party. That's where I started going to pop marches, and where I met Larry Ham and got to see stuff getting done downtown. After that, so I hope someone in this room knows or remembers Mr. Christian O'Neill from Science High School, because that man told me to go to Vassar College, and that was the best thing that I could ever do. He told me that they would pay my way, and they definitely helped when my father and my mother lost their jobs. And I was able to learn to become, just like Mr. O'Neill told me, a real deal organizer. When I was there, that's when I started working in public housing. That's when I started working with Protect the Dream Youth Program. That's when we started challenging for ethnic studies on campus. That's when we would challenge the president and we would put pressure. That's where I truly learned to organize. And well, when I came back home, I knew that's what I wanted to continue. I got to go to work with the Elizabeth Coalition to house the homeless in Elizabeth, New Jersey, where I began learning about the issues of housing and homelessness and poverty here or in the area. From there, or during that time, they were closing St. James Hospital. And if you remember, at that time I met Nancy Zach. From there, I started working with HUD Tenants Coalition. After 5 or 6 years of organizing tenants, I became an attorney. I now serve homeless young people every day, and I've been a tenant organizer for the last 10 years. I represent the people. I am proud to do so, and I will continue to do so, and I hope to live the rest of my life in Newark doing the same. Thank you very much. Please vote for me. Sign my petition.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jamarius Nickerson. I am indeed a native individual of Newark, New Jersey, born here, raised here, bred here. I attended South Street School, Oliver Street School, honorary graduate of the University High School of Humanities. I went on to obtain my Bachelor of Arts degree in English Literature, my Master of Science degree in Curriculum Instruction Technology, and I'm an educator first. I'm an activist as well. I've worked constantly in the Newark Public School System as a long-time educator since the year 2011, directly out of college. I went from the Newark Public School System to where I am now in the Princeton Public School District as an AP English teacher. And I feel that my platform is the eradication of homelessness because we can't speak about housing unless we speak about the homelessness crisis, and that there was legislation passed in this state called the Open Door legislation, in which there were a number of recommendations made at the state level to be implemented at the local level that we do not see being implemented. And so I believe that I'm the best candidate for councilman at large, merely because I believe that every individual deserves a high quality standard of living, even if it is in Newark, New Jersey. I was fortunate to be able to meet people who were able to invest in me, and so I'm willing to invest in those who also need some sort of social or emotional investment. Because it's not just about housing need or not just about homelessness, but it's about the social and emotional investment that we can extend to those individuals that are going through such a crisis. And so again, I stand for the eradication of homelessness, the reducing of crime through the city, through community policing, and also the employment of Newarkers by Newarkers. And indeed, I am going to run for councilman at large, and I am indeed going to win.
15
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody doing this evening? All right. My name is Dupre Kelly. Can everybody hear me well? My name is Dupre Kelly. Born and raised here in Newark, New Jersey. Lived in about 3 of the wards, 3 of the 5 wards, North Ward, South Ward, and grew up where I grew up in the West Ward, where I went to high school, went to Newark Tech, which is actually here, but I went to Newark Tech from the West Ward. Madison Avenue School, Petshine Avenue School, graduated from 13th Avenue Elementary School. I was born in a hospital that was called Martland before it was called University, and a lifelong Newarker. I had the mentality that when I was younger that I wouldn't make it to see 21. You know, and that's just to say that black young males growing up in this city, that was the mentality then. And it's crazy that I ever even thought that way. So when I had the opportunity to go to college, I went to Shaw University College where I pledged Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It was the best thing that ever could happen to me in my life. And I thought, you know, college was it, but then I was fortunate enough to pursue my dream and become a hip-hop star. You know, I'm originally from a platinum-selling hip-hop award-winning, BET award-winning, Billboard-nominated group called Lords of the Underground. And I just believe that housing is a hot topic in this city, but it's also an important topic, and that we truly do need homes for all of us.
15 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
That woke us up. It's a great wake up.
Donna Jackson, New Jersey hell. The passion, the emotion that we all feel in this city. The anger, the frustration, and the pushback that we don't get in this city is the reason we are in the condition we are in.
Preach.
Because the people have failed to stand for accountability. I know I'm the one to push you all to the edge and force you to fight for what's right. Win, lose, or draw, I'm going to continue to push you to do that. The housing crisis in Newark and across this country is also in place because systems are failing and stealing. A family that is in crisis with their housing should be able to go to Essex County Welfare at any moment and get help. But that does not happen because they are stealing. The system does not work, and we can prove it. President Obama put in place the Affordable Care Act as well as a home preservation program. That if you are behind on your mortgage a year and a half, there is help there for you. And we sat back and watched wealthy families in Essex County get $60,000,
You have 30 seconds.
$70,000, and $80,000 toward their mortgage while the rest of you suffer. We watch you go into landlord-tenant court with the worst judges in the country here in Essex County, with conditions in your apartments that are
You
abominable.
have 15 seconds.
And when I'm elected, I'm going to run them judges out of here. Amen.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bessie Walker, former councilwoman in the city of Newark, former director of the Office of Community Action of Essex County, which handled shelters, which funded the need for tenant landlord issues, which funded a lot of food pantries, which reached out and helped a number of individuals across not just this city, but this county. As when I took over that office, there were a number of changes that needed to be made. I found out that in the urban cities, there was no education or no information being disseminated to folks. I changed programs around and started disseminating information to urban cities, and then I got called on the carpet one time. Why are you going there? I said, because suburban residents are utilizing these dollars. Urban residents need to utilize these dollars because they need them for the support of their families in their housing. We put together a senior citizen program that gave back windows, doors, repaired things in their apartment units. Those were things that are not there. I put together a continuum of care for the county of Essex on the first year that garnered them $450 million to help homeless, sheltered individuals in the county of Essex. My proposal was used by HUD across this country as a best practice model. On the state of New Jersey, I redefined monitoring and helping and utilizing the dollars to really serve more people in this county. So I'm running again for Councilwoman at Large in the great city of Newark, and I would love to have your support because I am a fighter and a hell raiser also.
Good evening, I'm Abdushid Ahmed. I am a born and bred, raised Newarker. I am a homeowner, a business owner, a developer, educator, former educator with Newark Public Schools. I am pending retirement with Newark Police Department and currently working for the Essex County Sheriff's Department as a housing liaison. I am the person that puts the posting of foreclosure on these homes. In light of doing all of that, I take time out while I'm doing my job to do the better job, to teach people about short sale and how they can take their house, give it to their brother, their sister, their mother, whomever has adequate credit to keep their home until they could resurface their credit, get it together, and take their home back in 18 to 24 months. That's one dynamic of it. The second dynamic of it is Ms. Jackson talked about part of the Dodd-Frank legislation that President Obama put forth. And in that legislation, the indication was never made from the representatives of the 10th Congressional District that upon foreclosing on the property, that previous owner can write a letter to that financier indicating that the home has been sold and that they have to now remove that house from their credit report so that they can start over again. That's very important information, very vital information that the communities do not have. It should have come from Cory Booker, it should have come from Donald Payne, should have come from Senator Menendez, but it did not. And so the way that we can help the individuals of homelessness, the individuals of high rent, the individuals that are just displaced, is that the development inside of the municipality has to raise funds themselves.
I'm sorry, you're out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a nice round of applause? We're now going to begin with our first question for the evening.
Hey, how you doing?
And that question goes to Mr. Dupre Kelly. I'll read the question. Do you support the existing rent control ordinance? Why or why not? You have 1 minute to answer.
Yes, I support the RCO. And the reason being is because I'm about the people of the city. And this was an ordinance that was sponsored by the people. The people went out and got 1,800 petitions for this. This is something that the people stood up for. This is something that the people thought we needed to discuss and bring to the table. And then the council got behind it and passed it. So, yes, I support it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jackson, same question.
I support a rent control ordinance that works better with tenants. Unfortunately, I'm not sure of the status of the current rent control ordinance because there have been so many changes. I have paid attention, I have gone to many meetings, and I'm not sure if our current rent control ordinance supports the things that we went out to get those signatures for. So I'm not going to say I support it because I don't know currently where it is. However, I do support us drafting a real rent ordinance that was originally done by a lot of work of the Mr. Bill Goods and those in the room who have been championing for housing and Nancy Zach, and I don't want to start naming because then I'll forget about people, but I think that currently everyone that's a part of rent control needs to be brought to the table, and I know that that has not happened. Many in the South Ward that are renters, everybody needs to be brought as part of this, including people that live in low income.
Thank you. Ms. Walker, would you like me to reread the question?
Do I support the current
Do you support the existing rent control ordinance? Why or why not? You have 1 minute.
I'm too like Donna. I can't say that I support something that has been changed a number of times and you have no real completeness or wholeness to it. I would first like to take it, assess it, bring people to the table from all backgrounds, from the tenants to the landlords to lawyers that can help us organize and put together a comprehensive piece of legislation that will benefit low income, moderate income, market-based people. So
15 seconds.
once I take a look at it and assess it, I would love to bring people together and advertise throughout the city of Newark. Come and join us.
Thank you. Mr. Amat.
I would answer the question this way. You can't support something that doesn't exist. And so, that being said, someone mentioned that the council got behind it. The council got behind it because they seen 1,800 signatures. That's why they got behind it. Minus the 1,800 signatures, you still would be talking to bricks. So if the people don't understand the power that they have, then this would be a reciprocal process. We'll be in this room and other rooms and other forums talking about the same issues 4 years later, and 4 years later, and 4 years later. And so, if we don't sit people down that control the means of what a legislation is and how to implement that legislation, then we're going nowhere fast.
Thank you. Ms. Freeman, do you support the existing rent control ordinance? Why or why not? You have 1 minute.
Yes, I support rent control. I was the people who went out and got the people to sign the petition. So when you reference the people, hi, I'm the people. And there were several other people who came out and burnt up on the street. I walked morning, noon, and night, literally Saturdays and Sundays. I supported, and it was passed not because of 1,800 signatures, because Phil Murphy told them to pass it, because it was going to look really bad if they said, no, we don't want rent control for 78% of the population. So that's why it was passed. Victor Monterosa is an attorney, and he sat down and wrote the rent control ordinance along with many people from Homes for All Newark. I sat at several different meetings and put my input in. So it was an ordinance by the people. And it's being demolished by your current sitting council because they don't care if you don't have housing. Thank you.
Ms. Thomas, do you support the existing rent control ordinance? Why or why not? You have 1 minute.
Unfortunately, I don't support the current rent control ordinance because I don't feel like it was a collaborative effort. I don't feel like it brought everybody to the table that should have been at the table to work on it. I feel like it was done in a silo, so I do not support it because, like I said, it wasn't inclusive. And I think we should take a moment and sit down and try to schedule something where we can all rework it where it works for everyone. The renters, the homeowners, the city. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Monterosa.
Well, as Elaine said, I was fortunate to be one of the people who wrote the ordinance. I can't say that I totally wrote it. There were a lot of suggestions from people like the New Jersey Tenants Organization or people who are very familiar with rent control ordinances across the state. Yes, I was one of the people who was able to pick up many of the signatures that were required. being not sure of the status doesn't make any sense. It's valid, it's law. What we need is the city to defend this. What we need is the city to put the forms up. It's important for us to know that there are rent abatements. If you don't have heat in your building, you can get a 45% decrease from the tax abatement. We should support that. We should also support the fact that if there is a hardship increase, your landlord has to notify you. We also have to support that if your landlord wants to increase the rent, they must have conditions at 100%. That's what we got for you. That's what we did. That's what we did with you. That's what we did with the city. All 5 wards, all kinds of tenants. Rent control does not apply to subsidized or public housing. It applies to market rate, and we still included all kinds of tenants and homeowners. Thank you very much.
Mr. Nickerson, do you support the existing rent control ordinance? Why or why not? From the moment we give you the microphone, you have 1 minute. Let's make sure it's on. You have it on the front. You see the green button on? Okay.
I do not support the current rent control ordinance, mainly because I, as a longtime resident of Newark, New Jersey, was not a part of its creation. So I'm not aware of any of the quantitative data or any of the other variables that went into consideration when we drafted this legislation that supposedly is in favor of the rising prices of homelessness, foreclosure, all those
30
things.
seconds.
I feel that there needs to be, like as my colleague said, there needs to be a lot of more collaboration from the community. We don't know about RCO. And the reason why you don't know about RCO is because the people that we have in leadership are not doing their part to sort of communicate the benefits afforded by this legislation. So indeed, no, I don't stand for it.
Number one.
Thank you.
Question number 2. We will start with Colleen Freeman. The question is, what do you see as the future for public housing in Newark, including Terrell Homes? Tell us about a personal experience you have had visiting a public housing project. You have 90 seconds for this question.
Well, I've been in Terrell Homes, went there to petition for other candidates to make sure that we have actual representation that represents us, people who are concerned about the residents of the city of Newark. My problem with the Newark Housing Authority and its intertwining with the city of Newark public officials is that these structures are sound. If you look at Terrell Homes, if you look at the project on South Street, it's the same development by the same architect that if you go to the Kearney-Harrison border, there is a project, and that has green grass and trees, it's maintained. There's a wait list to get into this building. It's the same buildings that exist here in Newark. It's the same as Baxter Terrace that was torn down, razed to the ground. We're being put out and we're being bamboozled. We're being given a story. Oh, well, they're not sound and we got to close this down. If they want to close it down to sell it to a developer, they can be maintained, they can be redeveloped, and they can be as sound and as beautiful as it is in Harrison.
Can you please repeat the question for me? Thank you.
What do you see as the future for public housing in Newark, including Terrell Homes? Tell us about a personal experience you have had visiting a public housing project. You have 90 seconds for this question.
Well, I actually grew up in public housing. So I think the future of public housing should be that we maintain it for people who can't afford to provide that basic need of shelter. Like I said earlier, I work for the Division of Family Assistance and Benefits, and people come down to the office and they're always in need of shelter, and they're always being shuffled around, and they're always looking for a place to live. So the future of public housing should be something that's protected by our city council people. And also, I want to talk about Carmel Towers and how the woman who owned it, she wanted that place to be for people without homes. And unfortunately, that wasn't protected. And a lot of people lost their homes and they were displaced. So the future of public housing should be on the agenda
30 seconds.
for our city council. And also, we need to put into place protections so that people will always have that basic need that can't provide it for themselves. Thank you.
Terrell Homes has a very fond place in my heart. It is a place where I have been able to organize for several years. I've been able to flyer there when I was the community coordinator over at Ironbound Community Corporation for that area. I have also been involved in several meetings there. During that same time, when the buildings were flooded by Hurricane Sandy, I was passing out food rations that we got from the military, as well as making sure that we advocate to fix the boilers, which were all broken. I have been at the lead meetings. There was lead in the soil there, in the place where the residents, a lot of the elderly folks as well as children play. And I was there to advocate that we make sure that we clean that, and they did. In 2014, it was slated for demolition. I was still here at Rutgers, and fortunately, I was working with John Dubin, the same person who was able to win the lawsuit for Columbus Homes. That's my mentor. He told me, Victor, we know what's going on in Terrell Homes, go in there and do something about it. Same thing for John Dubin, the person who's responsible for the crime report that recently came out. He and I talked about Terrell very much, and I'm very proud to say that a lot of what's in the report, I was able to talk with him about it. In 2018, they attempted again, or in 2017, they attempted again. Now it's gonna not only remain open, but we know that tenants have a hand in designing it. That's what we have to do. That's why I believe in organizing. That's my record. 10 years of doing that. Vote for me because that's what I can bring to the council, the power of the people. Thank you.
I think as a person who also grew up in public housing, that when we demolition Newark Housing Authority sites, what we fail to take into consideration is that not only is it just a financial matter, but there are people who have invested years of their lives, their family members, their cultures inside of these housing sites. For the outside world, it's seen as a place where people are lazy. People don't want to pay market rent. People aren't able to, stay up with this standard quality of living. But that is not the truth. There are human beings living even in Terrell Homes and inside every last one of those Newark Housing Authority sites. I encourage all of you to come out to the Board of Commissioners meeting that is held by the Newark Housing Authority, and you'll see those same people come forward and tell their stories about how they live in conditions that would never exist in no other part of the state. But they exist only because they feel that our people who live there are unable to communicate for themselves. They don't matter. They're not aware of the sort of benefits that are afforded to them basically through the misconception that none of them pay taxes. They're working people living in affordable housing. What are we talking about? So I feel that we need to get that narrative recorrected, and no site should be torn down without investing the members of the community who actually live there. You can have outside people making decisions.
I'm sorry, your time
Thank you.
is up. Thank you.
We're going to start with Mr. Ahmad. Question number 3. How can we ensure that newly constructed housing not covered by rent control is accessible to moderate, low, and very low income residents? You have 1 minute to answer this question.
The only way that the accessibility can be given to moderate, low, very low, or non-existent individuals in our city is that the legislative body of the city has to control and have to develop an economic base. The money, we can't wait for grants from Trenton, and sure enough, we're not going to get anything from the federal government. By developing an economic base in the city of Newark based upon the commodities that we have, bottling our water, making tires, and doing other things to create funding, we then will control this, and we're not waiting for the next developer or the next contractor to give them 10 houses, 5 houses to develop, or to give them projects to develop. Once it's inside of the hands of the people control it.
Thank you. In the spirit of getting to all the questions before the evening's over, we're not going to reread the questions unless the candidate would like it at their own screen. Would you like it to be reread? Okay. Question number 3. How can we ensure that newly constructed housing not covered by rent control is accessible to moderate, low, and very low income residents? You have 1 minute.
Well, one of the things I think is that we should, when we're developing housing, looking at a master plan, looking at the model neighborhood initiative, looking at the inclusionary zone stuff, to make sure that housing is put in those plans, to make sure that low, affordable tenants can have options to live in those. Then also looking at the economics of our city, finding the viable jobs that will allow them to have access to live in homes that they, or apartments that they can afford to live in. Bringing in, with the training technology, retraining them so that they can apply for jobs that will also help them in that various area to be able to live and afford those homes.
Unfortunately, quick answers to complex questions. First of all, we need to have some adequate inspectors in our city that when any housing goes up, is inspected. I visited the seniors at 140 Spruce Street, and the floors are sinking already, and that building has not been open 4 years, and that is a low-income structure. So that will be the first thing. Second of all, we have to get some elected officials who aren't on the flim-flam, shim-sham, kickback team, that every time a construction company comes in and decides they want to kick into the affordable housing bucket, they'll do that versus putting up adequate housing. I will never say affordable housing because people begin to think that that's affordable for everyone. We have to learn the adequate terms. Affordable housing, you have to make double the salary that they are requiring, which for most of us would be $125,000, so that doesn't apply to us. Low income is the way to go until we get higher pay in it.
How can we ensure the newly constructed housing not covered by rent control is accessible to moderate, low, and very low income residents? I believe that, like she said, this is a complex question for a short answer, right? And when we have these developers come in, we have all of these ordinances, the ISO and things that have you, where they get to opt out. And when they opt out, they have to pay a hefty fine. They put this fine into a trust. And that trust, that amount of money, it goes to the New Jersey state. And then we as a city have to apply to the New Jersey state to see where that money goes. We need a NEWARK trust that we can grab this money from, and then we create the housing, the affordable housing situation in our community.
Mr. Nickerson, would you like me to reread the question? I want to make sure you're
I want to agree with Donald Jackson in that I do not feel that that's a simple, it's a simple solution to ensuring quality housing for all. However, I do feel that we have an obligation to pressure those that are in leadership to put in place the legislation that sort of keeps those developers who are coming in from sort of opting out, that sort of reinforces the notion that if you're going to build here in Newark, a percentage of those units that you build are going to be for affordable housing by our terms. Not by terms that you make up and variables that you create, but by our terms. And so I think that this is also in alignment with curtailing gentrification in our city as well. No one wants to speak about that, but that's a very high issue in the city as well. We have people who are building here who just merely have come in, not in the sense of quality housing, but they come to make money. This is the largest, most diverse city in the state of New Jersey. Don't you ever forget it.
Folks, the answer to this question is a lot easier when you've worked on it for most of your adult life. This is why I'm your candidate. This is not available because there's a state law that says that those type of buildings are not allowed. We need to organize and advocate to take apart that state law. Right now, it's interpreted by the court. Guess what? I'm an attorney. I know how to attack that. It's against, or we need to get rid of that payment in lieu of taxes in the inclusionary zoning ordinance. No, it does not come from the state. It goes to a city fund that is currently not being properly administrated. We need to set up rules for that. Also, I'm the person that knows how Cardinal Towers, which was recently mentioned, and Zion Towers, could have been turned into a co-op. So poor people could have owned housing here in Newark. We're missing those opportunities. There's a lot more because mortgages are reaching 40-year maturity. I know how to do that. Vote for me.
Okay, I think we need to go back to the table and renegotiate our current inclusionary zone ordinance where only 10% of the housing in these newly constructed buildings, well, 10% actually isn't enough. Because if you have 200 units, that means only 20 of them will be affordable. And as someone mentioned, Ms. Jackson mentioned, affordable, we need to really nail down what that means because affordable is really not affordable. And also we need to support the increase in minimum wage so that people can afford to pay their rent. Like I said, I work down at 18 Rector Street, people making $8 an hour, affordable rent is not affordable for them. And they're struggling to survive. And also, we need to make sure that we're supporting the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey, where they're lobbying to put $600 million back into creating affordable housing. Okay.
First of all, cities don't make housing. Your city council people don't make housing. That's not what you hired them to do. They're your employees. They're to utilize the laws and administrate and get things handled for you. There could be land shares where people can get together. When I say people, residents of the city of Newark, given these dilapidated houses to rehab, there should be rebates given to these people to take over the housing. Why are multimillionaires getting 30-year rebates? Residents of the city of Newark need to be getting these rebates, and that they can utilize this to prop up property in the city. I walk past thousands of abandoned buildings, and we have homelessness. There's homes all over the city of Newark. Your administrators are not administrating properly. There are programs already in existence that your city council isn't even looking at because you're not making them look. Hire me. I'll do the job for you.
I want to announce a couple of things. You should all know that all of these questions were given to the candidates in advance, with the exception of part 2 of question 2, which we accidentally did not allow this side of the room to address. So we're going back to question number 2. And that was, what do you see as the future for public housing in Newark, including Terrell Homes? Tell us about personal experience you had visiting a public housing project. Again, you'll have 90 seconds for this, and we're going to start on the end with Mr. Kelly.
Well, the future of public housing, I believe that we need to create a system. And when I say we, I'm talking about NEWARKers and stakeholders and elected officials, and everybody needs to come to the table to create a piece of legislation that allows renters to become owners. And what I mean by that is that You have people who lived in Terrell homes that I've known for 30 years or more in other public housing, lived there for a long time of their life and just renting. So if we do create some type of situation where we can allow residents who don't make a lot of money in this city, the minimum is capped off at $34,000. If we can make some type of legislation or some type of plan that allows them to pay their low income, and a piece of that income goes to buying the property in 30 years. If we can give these corporations 30-year tax abatements, then we can at least do this for our residents of our city in Newark and allow them to become owners after 30 years of their apartments, like a co-op situation.
Thank you.
The future of public housing on the current federal track will no longer exist in 10 years, particularly in the state of New Jersey, if we don't follow what they're doing in New York. We are too quiet in New Jersey. We are extremely in a coma in Newark, with the exception of a few. But we are in a coma in Newark. They don't even know we want public housing because we have said nothing for years. I was a part of putting the team together at Stella Wright in 1997 when they wanted to close that, to ensure that all the residents that moved got their phone bill paid, got their security deposit, got their money for PSC&G, because at that time they wanted $500 to $1,500 deposits for people to turn their lights on who were coming out of public housing that never had an account before. So the future of public housing continues to be dismal in Newark because we allow the Newark Housing Authority to steal, they allow them to mismanage, they have not made repairs to units, and we sit in a city right now where our city council, mayor, and board of housing authority allow units to continue to be boarded despite the fact that people have been on that list forever, including myself. So until we begin, Newark, and this is going to be the answer to everything, to start saying something and shake us some trees, they're going to continue to abuse us.
The future public housing I see in this city is very bleak. Back in 1998 to 2006, when I sat on the Newark Municipal Council, I always worked with our housing and tenant presidents to start to organize and to hold their federal legislators accountable, because those are the folks that bring the dollars back into your municipality and then your city council. Always been a voice, saw Donna out there with me, a dish out there with me, fighting for residents of public housing. Was a housing commissioner for a very short time on that board, and I was deemed an arrogant person on the board. When I was in the county of Essex, I used dollars to take homeless individuals out of shelters and put them in housing units and pay their portion of their renting fee, their fees in there. And so I just see it is bleak, but I believe that we need to organize our tenants and mobilize them to understand one thing. Those legislators work for you. You need to make them bring back those dollars into the city. If not, you need to vote them out.
Thank you. You have 90 seconds.
I do not believe that, and I concur with Donna. I was there with her through that turmoil of the newly invented scattered sites housing for Newark Newark Authority for Public Housing. I was there with her. Prior to that, when Scudder Home, Hayes Home, Stella Wright began to close and the demolishment plan went into effect, the people understood what their options were at that time. Some didn't understand that they had options. And so it comes back to what the people are willing to do. If the same structure of legislative body returns back to office, then public housing will remain the way that it is. To tell a personal experience about my existence in public housing, I come from Hayes Home, Stella Wright, Scudder Home, Baxter Terrace, Hyatt Court, Grafton Avenue. So everywhere that I've laid my head, I've had that experience. But through that experience, it made me the person that I am. We have to get people to the understanding that this is not their life. This is not all that they can or will be about. But if they are not listening to that message, if they don't understand that message, then again, it goes back to the legislators of the municipality doing nothing. And Donna said that they're doing.
Now that we're back on track. Question number 4. How do we ensure that planning and zoning board members are qualified to make decisions that exempt projects from the master plan and the zoning code? You will have 1 minute to answer the question, and we will start with Ms. Thomas.
Okay, I'm gonna be really fast with this one. We can ensure that planning and zoning board members are qualified by requiring them to attend trainings and teaching them about the master plan and the zoning code. If they aren't informed and they don't know, then there's no way that we can expect them to be efficient in doing their job. So the answer is very simple: training and development, and making it a requirement.
30 seconds. I'm going to ask Ms. Betsy Walker.
First of all, you should have a resume from them to ensure that their background is in those areas that are needing planning and zoning. And if they do, then you should train them what the laws, what the ordinances are on the books, give them training, send them to more developmental training so that they can make a full impact on that planning and zoning.
I'm going to ask Mr. Nickerson.